This assertion of boats going over the edge of a ball Earth is silly. Check out this footage from a channel called Wide Awake. This guy filmed some great sky and horizon shots showing that objects can be brought back into view, and more importantly, his shots also demonstrate diffraction and the resolution limit of these objects at those distances and at those angles. As you can see in his footage, the boats, once they are close enough to resolve, appear like little smudges, and they also appear to be floating above the horizon. The boats are not mirages floating in the air, although there is an inferior mirage that appears inverted below the actual boats in his footage. To prove this, he actually tracks them all the way in, and the closer a boat gets, the more resolved it becomes, and the more detail you can see. This is a perfect illustration of visual acuity and the angular resolution of the camera, which is obviously better than our eyes, but the principle is the same. And again, if you increase your altitude, say to the top of a hotel or in an airplane or on a mountain, you create better angles and you can of course see further, but even there you will eventually reach a resolution limit. It is unavoidable, but it is not an edge that Santa Claus is falling over. Look at the water in his shots. Some would call the resolved water line the horizon, but you can clearly see boats fully in the water beyond the resolved water line. You can even barely make out the water being sprayed up from the motor. The surface of the water extends beyond the resolved water line, but it is too far and at too sharp of an angle for the camera or your eye to completely resolve. There's also a lot of diffraction going on due to this angle and the light or atmospheric conditions. Therefore, you get a blurred section that reflects the sky and the boat as an inferior mirage. Again, this happens beyond a point where the eye or camera can no longer clearly resolve the water due to the angle and diffraction. It is where your eye or camera can no longer distinguish points of light. The image blurs and turns into a mirror under certain conditions. Look at the shimmering and changing edges of the top of the waterline as the camera resolves it at its maximum distance. Beyond this distance, the water is at too small of an angle to resolve any detail. At this point, it does exactly what a road will do on a hot day. It reflects the light waves like a mirror because the eye or camera can more easily resolve these reflected light rays than they can the actual surface of the road or water. On the ground or on the water, you can see the inferior mirage or reflection of the boats and cars. Some people will claim that the boat itself is a superior mirage and that the actual boat is over the edge of a ball. This is silly for two reasons. Number one, a superior mirage is inverted, and number two, in this footage, he tracks these boats the entire way in, so you can verify with your own eyes how a boat will barely come into view as a small blur, and then as it gets closer and closer, the angles get larger and your eye can then resolve more and more detail. This is observable, repeatable, apparent, and can be verified by anyone. Unlike NASA's theories, of course, that nobody can verify unless they can build a little rocket ship. Finally, I would like to discuss the issue of boats or buildings being cut off by the horizon line over water, which many people falsely attribute to the object being over the edge of a ball Earth. Again, I would start by saying that it is easy to debunk this simply by increasing your altitude. If there were a massive drop in curvature obscuring the boat or building, this would be apparent from higher up. Our eyes are not that bad. We can clearly distinguish slopes and hills in the distance, and when you increase your altitude, you can clearly see that the target object lies on the same flat plane as the original observation point. This is simply a function of perspective, angular resolution, and diffraction. When you stand on the seashore, you can see a horizon line, which is basically the limit of your ability to resolve the water, because at a certain distance, the angle becomes too small and diffraction also plays a part. Above this waterline horizon will be everything that your eye can resolve above your eye level. For example, from the beach I can see about 3 to 4 miles of the water's surface, which in my field of view extends from my feet up to my eye level, and it represents my horizon and the limit of my sight up to my eye level. Now, there are hotels located about 18 miles away in this picture, and these hotels are above my horizon line, yet appear to be cut off by the horizon. Not because they are over the edge of a ball, this is simply the point where they fit in due to perspective, where objects that are closer are in front of objects that are further away, which is also a function of diffraction and angular resolution. I cannot resolve the hotels any lower because the angle is too small. If I could resolve the hotels lower, then logically I would be able to resolve more of the surface of the water at a greater distance. But we know this is not possible due to the laws of physics. However, if I were to go up in an airplane, I would be able to see the entire distance from the beach to the hotel, and I could also see that it is flat as a pancake. The hotel is not obscured by the edge of a magic ball. It is simply perspective and angle of view. The limit of what I can see above and below my eye level converge at what we call the horizon line or vanishing point. So check out this little experiment I did. In order to simulate the size and distance of that hotel, I took a small glass bottle and put it on the road and then filmed from ground level. Now the hotel is about 18 stories, which equals about 180 to 200 feet. I used 250 feet just to be conservative and to give it some room above the actual water line, and the distance is 17.5 miles. The glass bottle is 3.5 inches, so that meant that I would have to put it at a distance of about 107 feet to get the same ratio. Now, when I started filming, I was standing up and I could zoom in on the bottle, the entire bottle, top to bottom, and then I pan out, I take the camera and I place it on the ground, and even on the ground it's actually conservative because the lens of the camera is still about 1 inch to 1.5 inches above the ground, so this is a conservative experiment. And when I zoom in, you can see now that the angle of resolution is just too small, and combined with the diffraction, you cannot make out the bottom of the bottle. It disappears. It is cut off, and that is exactly what you're seeing in those pictures and videos where buildings or boats are cut off at the bottom. Your eye cannot resolve the detail of the surface of the ground or the bottom of that bottle. It's just too sharp of an angle. And you can even actually see beyond the bottle where the road is again the same color, because your eye can resolve that a little bit better because it makes a curve and the angle is a little bit better on the road beyond where the bottle is. So that's a pretty interesting little experiment and shows you the effect of diffraction and angular resolution. And again, even on the ground, the lens of the camera is about 1 inch or 1.5 inches off the ground, which when you compare that to the bottle, that is almost half of the bottle. So that would probably equal an observer that is about 100 or 150 feet in the air filming the hotel in New Smyrna. So if I was actually on the ground with the camera, I'm sure that the diffraction would probably cover almost the entire bottle, if not half the bottle, and it would look exactly like the water line covering these hotels or these boats. But you can see the principle. It's verifiable and it's repeatable, so it's an explanation. We don't have to use the Santa Claus falling over the edge of a ball to explain what we see. If I'm standing on the beach at sea level, then obviously my field of view from my feet to the horizon will be much shorter due to the angle. Again, about 3 miles from the beach is approximately the limit for a 6-foot tall individual. Yet the distance of my field of view above the horizon will be much greater due to the angles. Therefore, I can see most of a hotel 18 miles away but again, not the bottom of the hotel due to the angular resolution and the angle of perspective. The same principle applies to a sunset or a sunrise. The waterline horizon at the beach is about 3 to 4 miles out, yet the sun is thousands of miles out when it disappears due to the limit of angular resolution and light propagation. We can see the sun at a much further distance because it is so large and high in the sky. But just like anything else, once it gets far enough away from the observer, the angle becomes so small that it will disappear, the furthest edge first, appearing to go down behind the water. This is what you would expect to see based on perspective. Something closer will appear in front of something farther away. This does not mean it is due to a spinning ball Earth. It simply vanishes at the waterline horizon due to perspective. Even the sun is subject to the laws of perspective, angular resolution, and diffraction. With a sunrise, it is the opposite. We see the top of the sun first because it is approaching us. Therefore, the side that is coming toward us is the first section of the sun to come into our field of view due to angular resolution. And again, due to the laws of perspective, the sun will always appear to be behind the much closer waterline. Some will say that it is due to the spin of the ball that you live on, but I think perspective makes more sense, and the sun is simply coming into our field of view due to, again, angular resolution. The problem that truth seekers or flat earthers face when trying to expose lies and deceptions is that most people put their own brains on sleep mode, and they put their trust in the so-called scientific authorities to investigate and explain the reasons for phenomena that we observe from Earth. This is not to say that the scientific community is purposely promoting an incorrect model. What is happening is that everyone is so specialized that they only see a small portion of the big picture. We are basically compartmentalized due to the level of sophistication of technology and our economy. People are also conditioned from kindergarten and throughout school to conform, to obey, and repeat government-sanctioned science. People are conditioned to treat any questioning of the spinning ball Earth as idiotic and primitive. If you mention flat Earth, the reaction is guaranteed to be ridicule, laughter, or even anger at the stupidity of such a statement. No one likes to be wrong, and no one likes to be ridiculed, so there's not much straying from the herd in today's world. I personally believe there is a lot of compelling evidence that calls into question the scientifically accepted model brought to us by the politically created agency of NASA. If everything is exactly how space agencies and government scientists tell us, then we are going to need much more and reliable proof other than CGI images and silly old stories. It is amazing how academia conveniently forgets the debates that used to rage about the rotundity of the Earth, and not by idiots, by learned men and women. So, in closing, I just want to reiterate that there are other alternatives to the theories that were taught to us as fact by space agencies and the political scientific authorities. There are logical and scientifically accepted laws of physics such as angular resolution, diffraction, and perspective, which can be applied in this pursuit. You don't need to be a math genius or have a PhD in physics to understand that there are physical limitations on our ability to see, even with telescopes and cameras. We need to have faith in our own ability to think and use logic and reason. Otherwise, there are many opportunistic groups of individuals who will step in and do the thinking for us. And these groups may not always have our best interests at heart. In fact, they will take advantage and control those who cannot or will not think for themselves. This, I believe, is the modern-day manifestation of slavery, where most people no longer think like humans, they simply repeat and react. Thanks so much for watching, guys.